Okay, welcome everyone. Appreciate your patience. We did convene briefly in closed, and this is in advance of tonight's council meeting being held in council chambers. It is now 6:49 p.m. Fortunately, it was only 20 seconds, not like 2 minutes. It would be unbearable. Okay, so we're back, and the first thing we'll do now that we're out of closed is I will invite a council colleague to read the land acknowledgement. Who would like to do that this evening? Looking for a hand. Councillor Strachan, okay, go ahead.
The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you. And I should recognize that tonight we have Councillor O'Sullivan joining us from New Zealand. And this is possible because of a very long-standing project that was overseen by Ms. Jeannot and our Parks and Rec facility staff to allow for hybrid meetings. So we're extremely grateful and appreciative that a long-standing project to modernize this facility and allow for hybrid meetings appears to have materialized. And I know there were lots of little hiccups on the way, but great to see it in action. And Councillor Sullivan, who's in New Zealand, I think until early March, will give us a full opportunity to test it out. So thank you, Councillor Sullivan. I believe it's the following day in New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken.
It is almost 1 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon.
Wow. Okay. So you're well ahead of us.
Yes. Thank you.
No
Thanks
problem.
to the team who made it possible.
We're happy to have you, and we'll see how it all goes. I'm sure for the most part, it'll be a smooth ride. So with that, we will now move to disclosures of interest. Council colleagues, any disclosures in regards to the items listed on the agenda this evening? Not seeing any, then we'll carry on. We have no presentations or delegations this evening. And of course, we just have one item on our consent agenda, which is the adoption of minutes. So I will ask for a mover to seconder for the singular item under the consent agenda, please. Can I see some hands? A mover, seconder? Councillor Barclay, Councillor Strachan, thank you. I will call the question. All in favor, please. Good.
Yes.
That carries. Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. And we'll move on. And of course, one of the major reasons for tonight's meeting is the ongoing municipal budget deliberations. As council and members of the public are likely aware, we did hold 2 consultations. We had an initial budget presentation a number of weeks ago, and Ms. Dunlop received some questions and inquiries through that process, and she is returning to us this evening to both highlight the importance of approving the operating and capital budget for water and wastewater, but also will update us on some feedback that she has received and her team has received, and that will give council the opportunity to provide further direction before a formal adoption of the agenda, which is now expected on March 5th. So Ms. Dunlop, over to you, and glad to see you're in good health after a rough return last week from a bit of travel abroad.
Thank you, Your Worship. So good evening all, and thank you for attending this presentation of the Senior Management Proposed 2024 Budget again. The budget presentation has been modified to provide highlights such as the definitions of current municipal debt, carryover projects from 2023, and refined revenue sources. Next slide. Here is the shortened agenda for this evening, including the highlighted changes. Some slides are repeats from last presentation and will be used for question purposes only. Next slide. North Grenville budget is broken down into tax-based operating and capital, and rate-based water and wastewater operating and capital. Both programs identify revenue sources and values. Next slide. The North Grenville team plan to continue to improve service delivery by reviewing policies and bylaws, update our strategic plan, and multiple master planning documents. Next slide. Continue modernization through the digitization of records and
Just 1 second, we're having audio glitches. Do we carry on?
We're just gonna grab a new battery for you.
All right. So hang on, Ms. Dunlop.
shall do.
Your audio is failing, faltering. Trials and tribulations of a new system. Sure, we'll get it all worked out.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sounds better already. All
There
right,
we go.
carry on.
So in regards to modernization, we plan to continue to digitize municipal records and the building permit process, plus provide for better virtual participation in council and committee meetings as we see this evening. Next slide. We plan to improve our project planning through online management programming, refreshing master plans such as the fire department, transfer station, and emergency management HIRAs, and improve financial reporting, including trending on a more frequent basis. Next slide. The next two slides are the municipal commitments to investing in our community through the community grant program, community support program, long-term, and healthcare. Next slide. Community development, signature events, and cultural items. Next slide. The summary of the 2024 proposed operating budget provides for a 3.5% municipal tax increase and will provide an overview of the operational departments in coming slides. The revenue for the municipal government is primarily through municipal property taxes, although we do receive formula-based grants for certain purposes from higher levels of government, which are embedded within the budget. Next slide. This slide pictorially represents the breakdown of our revenue sources. Next slide. This slide, as per the request, identifies the unaudited position of the municipal reserves for the year end 2020 through 2022. Next slide. The proposed taxation increase for the municipal component of the property tax is 3.5%, which above growth will provide an increase of just over $611,000. Next slide. The municipality also accumulates debt for larger and long-term items. The next two slides demonstrate the current debt, annual payments, and includes the additional information requested of outstanding balances. Next slide. It also includes the campus mortgage, which is paid by the reserve fund created in 2018. Next slide. The property tax rate has three components: education, county, and municipal. There's been no indication of an increase in the educational component. The United Counties of Legion Grenville, I believe, are still going through the budget deliberations and propose a current rate of 6.28%, along with the municipal proposed increase of 3.5%. Next slide. The tax bill does not all go to the municipality. Although we collect the property tax bills at the municipality, we send 12% away for education, 35% to the county, which leaves 53% for residential front-facing municipal government operations. Next slide. The next 11 slides are departmental operating budgets, which we've seen in previous presentations. These have been highlighted in past meetings, and we can pause on each slide should there be any questions. First is the CAO's office. Next slide. Finance. Next slide. Corporate services. Next slide. Building division.
Ms. Dunlop, if I might,
Yes.
if you could speak to how the building division is financed. I know there's a combination of, I think, fees and other revenues that are generated for the building division. Could you add further context or maybe ask Ms. Martin up to you?
Absolutely, Your Worship. I can start, and if there's anything else, Director Martin can fill in. Basically, the building division is classified as a silo budget and they're self-funding. They do charge fees and permits in regards to the applications that are put forth, and they are supposed to be a self-balancing budget. They may year to year draw from or place into reserves in order to create that balance. Through you, Your Worship, if Director Martin, if you wish to add anything else?
So Ms. Martin, Ms. Dunlop, given the high growth in North Grenville, some of the expected residential builds, we are likely to see, certainly, if not all of them won't happen in this year, but perhaps permits will be applied. Do you have confidence that the building division is sufficiently resourced, given that high growth that we have seen and expect to see, if not accelerate?
I will ask Director Martin to answer that question.
Through your worship. So in regards to building, we do on an annual basis trend out what we expect to bring in from a building permit perspective. That's through development approvals that we have through plans of subdivision, as well as site plan approval. And we also have discussions with our major builders in the community as to what their expectations are for building in the coming year. And we look at those factors and decide as to whether or not we have enough staff resources. For the 2024 year, we're not requesting to add any additional building staff at this time. We do have adequate staffing levels to support the function of the building division. And given that it is a silo budget and they are self-sustaining from revenues, if there was a time that we identified the need for an additional resource in a building official, we would bring that matter to council for approval and identify how it would be funded through the building budget. So the more building permits we have, the more revenue that comes in, that helps support additional staff resources as required. But for 2024, we are adequately resourced to support the development in the coming year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to acknowledge Deputy Mayor Barkley.
Yeah, just to follow up to your question to Director Martin through you, Madam Mayor. How often do we review the user fees of the building department?
Through your worship to the deputy mayor, prior to the increase that was brought in 2021, the fees hadn't been updated in quite some time. So in 2021, when the fees were introduced, we built in an automatic cost of living increase into the fees so that we're sustainable and that we're not having to come back 20 years later and do a significant increase in fees to catch up to the level of service that is provided. We do annually look at our fees just to see, ensuring that they are comparable, or if we're finding we're having some issues or interpretations, or we need to add additional fees to cover off some of the anomalies that might come in, just to cover off some of our service levels. We look at that and would make suggestions annually to council if needed.
And if I could just go back one slide, if you don't mind. certainly when we've done these budget presentations in the past, council colleagues might note that there are asterisks under certain departments that delineate some of the costs that are attached to, for example, corporate services. You can see the contracted property services, professional services that are outlined. Under finance, there is no such line. So just for the purposes of the public, can someone enlighten us on what the contracted property service would be under the finance department? I'm sorry, I know we have a deputy director of finance with us this evening, so perhaps he doesn't have the information, but just something I'd like to highlight. I found that in talking to the community about the budget, those sort of breakouts of what each department is actually responsible for, especially for those larger budget envelopes, is very helpful. And I just noticed now that it doesn't exist for a couple of the departments that we're speaking of this evening.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is nothing specifically identified under the finance department, but typically the contracted property services are more soft costs such as software, IT support, et cetera, and professional services can be things such as the audit, which is an annual requirement under the Municipal Act.
So professional services, I understand it's more the property services. But to your point, you're speaking of IT and other software that's contracted under the auspices of property, either intellectual property?
Yes, under corporate services, the actual IT and software for the municipality wide is included. So it would be similar costs under the finance. I can't speak to the specifics, but can bring that back on March the 5th.
Okay, that would certainly be helpful. Thank you. And might I just ask, before you transition into your other slides, and certainly welcome any other inquiries from council, where does our on-demand transit service, where is it captured within these departmental portfolios?
It is under the one of the contracted services under Public Works.
It is under Public Works, so not under corporate services. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Next slide. I believe we were on council. There we go. So this is the operational expenses for council. Next slide. Parks, Recreation and Culture.
So council colleagues, if there's anything you want to flag, this would be your opportunity to do it. Of course, as Ms. Dunlop has said, she's presented these slides in the past. So go ahead, Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you. Next slide is the police. This covers the police services the police contract for the OPP.
And might I just get a reminder from Chair of the Police Services Board, Councilor Barkley, can you remind me of the tenure for the current the current contract we have? How long is the contract we currently have with the OPP?
I believe it's 3 years.
Right.
I don't recall exactly when that clock started
Right.
ticking.
I think it's about a year ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
It's
something
my
like that.
understanding. Maybe that's something, Chloe, that you can just identify for us. Because again, just for the purposes of the public, it would be valuable to have that delineated as part of the slide presentation.
Your Worship, I believe Director Jeannot can answer
Oh,
that
great.
question.
Thank you.
Through your worship, so we did extend it
Yes.
for this year,
Yes.
last year, but it will expire when the new policing act comes into place on April 1st.
Thank you for that reminder. And of course, Ms. Juneau, you've been very involved in that whole process. And it's a good opportunity to highlight that we will have, we believe, the Solicitor General in Ontario is saying that they will be fully sanctioning the new detachment boards throughout the province as of April 1. And Ms. Juneau, with this in mind, do you expect then one of the first orders of business will be the new contract with the OPP?
Through your worship, I expect so. They have given us an estimate for the next 3 years for costing, and they're all aligned with what you see on the slide, so we don't expect that to change.
Okay, thank you for that refresher. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next is Emergency and Protective Services. So that's our fire department as well as our fire prevention and training offices.
Might I ask a quick follow-up? I know just to Chief Oakham that the ongoing challenges with recruitment are always foremost in the minds of himself and the deputy chief from a recruitment standpoint to ensure we have a sufficient number of fire volunteers, fire personnel. Do you feel that this budget within your own department helps to enable some of the ongoing or more intense recruitment that you expect to do?
Thank you, Your Worship. In response to your question, we have counted in this budget for some recruitment that's going to take place this year, as well as we've accounted for the new provincial legislation for certified training, which is also included in this budget presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next slide. The Public Works Department is one of the largest operating departments within the municipality. Next slide, closely followed by the North Grenville Municipal Center. Next slide is the Planning and Bylaw Department, which again are fee, user-based, as well as taxation-based. The next slide is the North Grenville Public Library. And I'd like to point out that Emily Farrell, our library CEO, is here this evening, should there be any questions. Next slide. That completes operations. And now we move into capital. Again, we have had a look at the capital slide, so I will fly through fairly quickly.
Ms. Dunlop, before you do, I just wanted to ask a question about the library. I know the pilot project for the Sunday hours is something that I believe will continue for the purposes of this proposed budget. I know for families with 2 working parents who can't make it to the library during the week, that additional Sunday, I think, time was valuable. And I'm just curious to know where the Sunday pilot project stands.
Thank you, Your Worship. To answer your question, we are tracking visitations to the library on Sundays, and we will be reporting on that later on this year as part of a process where we will be reviewing all of our open hours. And there will be, at that time, the library will be making a decision about if we're going to make Sunday hours permanent or if we're going to keep it as seasonal or essentially what our open hours will look like for 2025 and moving forward.
I also just have a quick question on statutory days like Family Day. Do you open or close?
Thank you, Your Worship. To answer your question, we currently are closed. It's not out of the realm of possibility for us to be open on statutory holidays, but our current policy is such that we are closed to the public.
And just quickly to follow up on the Sunday hours, is there a reason in your minds, or what would be the reason where you wouldn't consider carrying forward with the Sunday hours policy?
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. At this time, I can't make a solid commitment, but what I can say, based on previous usage habits by the community, we see a really high demand for the Sunday hours over fall, winter hours, and then it significantly drops off once we get better weather, basically. So it's entirely possible that we would be looking at seasonal Sunday hours for the foreseeable future, maybe eventually down the road, year round. But we will listen to the community, and if they're coming in on Sundays, we will respect that.
And
Thank you.
currently, do you have Sunday hours?
I'm sorry?
Do you currently have Sunday hours?
Yes, Your Worship,
Okay.
we do currently have Sunday hours, and we will be offering it until the end of April.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. So Ms. Dunlop, we're now transitioning to capital, is that correct? Or, sure, Councillor Strachan?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I know further on in this deck, there's the 2023 capital carry forward slides that are in here. For operational pieces where there may not be full use of allocated funds, where do those numbers get captured? Can we see that anywhere in this deck, or is it rolled back in someplace?
Through you, Your Worship. The operational carryovers, such as the Stormwater Master Plan, and there's a couple other items, are included in the operational budget, and the they will be that we draw from reserves because the money has already been allocated for the specific project. So they are identified. Unfortunately, we did not get a list pulled together. There are probably about a half a dozen projects across departments and primarily in the Public Works Department, from studies that were not completed due to staff resources lacking, or multi-year projects such as Burt's Rapids, the Stormwater Master Plan, and of course, a couple others that are escaping my mind at the moment. But we can come back on March the 5th with that list.
Just a very quick follow-up, if I may, Madam Mayor. For an example, for something that I would see in the text down below, like downtown Kemptville CIP, for example, if that is undersubscribed, where do, to see where that would be captured, and is that allocated funds that gets rolled over into next year so that less is allocated? It's those kinds of items that I'm curious about.
Through you, your worship, yes, that is a specific item. It's about 116,000 on an annual basis, of which it was severely undersubscribed last year. So it is a top up the next year for what was ever spent the previous year, including the operational budget.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to the CAO. So I understand things like the Stormwater Master Plan that would go into the water. Which budget would it go into? Which reserve? Is it a dedicated reserve, or is it tagged in our general reserves, our municipal reserves?
Through you, your worship, it's basically from the surplus that is left over the previous years, which is a general reserve, but it's not, so it's almost like an in and an out because it's so quick, but it is under Public Works General, not water and sewer rate based.
Good. Okay, carry on.
Next slide, please. So this is the capital overview, which provides total expected expenses of a little over $8.7 million, which is broken down by department. This does include the capital carryovers. Next slide. This is the capital that is funded from many sources such as taxation, but also grants, reserves, and development charges. This is broken down by funding source. Next slide. The next 4 slides highlight the capital programs by department. We can pause if there are any questions.
Yes, go ahead, Deputy
Yeah,
Mayor.
thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to the Director of Public Works, Mr. Finley. The last public consultation we had, I had some questions about road projects and the fact that this year we have slated to spend $1,565,000, and you had a very detailed list of where that money was spent. I did note that there were no gravel rebuilds in 2023. I think I understand that's why there's no tar and chip, or I guess we call it new, paving, or slated this year. Is that, I'm looking for the terminology. It's not tar and chip. Surface treatment. Surface treatment, hard surface treatment. That's why we're not doing any this year. So I understand that we're a little bit behind in terms of our asset management of what we want to accomplish in terms of road builds, especially when I'm talking about gravel rebuilds. That those are municipal roads primarily in the rural areas. So I would like to see if it's possible to keep on track with our asset management, which it's very rough figures of $2 million a year. So there is a shortfall this year, rather than the $2 million we're saying we should be spending each year on road builds, of about $435,000. Now, I wondered if there is room to reconsider the road projects and add another project, a rural project, into the mix for this year. Somewhere less than $435,000, obviously, but a major rebuild that we could accomplish this year. And we can talk a little bit about how that would be financed if you can find a project around that level of funding that we could, from your list, that we've not allocated to do this year, but we've pushed off to another year.
Thank you. So through you, your worship, yes, as you've indicated, Deputy Mayor, we did not complete any gravel rebuilds in 2023. The rebuilds that were slated for 2023 were a section of Town Line Road as well as Norton Road. Those have been placed into the 2024 proposed budget. We did also, in anticipation of trying to catch up originally, we did look at also including Hess Road as part of that gravel rebuild. However, in keeping with the budgetary constraints that were provided to us, that was subsequently removed and stuck with just the projects that weren't completed last year. That Hess Road was estimated at just over $328,000. Could be a project that we could look back to consider if that is council's wish.
Go ahead,
Uh,
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. And in those public consultations of which council was able to ask questions, I also noted that these road projects are funded through upper levels of government or other funds to the tune of 2/3. So in your breakdown, in the detail, each year, 1/3 of the funding comes from taxation, 2/3 comes from other levels of funding. So with a project of the size of Hess, we'd be looking at 1/3 of that figure. And I think you said 328,000?
Correct.
So I just want to confirm that 2/3 of that would come from other levels of government. Is that correct?
Right. and
project?
Ms. Dunlop can speak to this, or maybe you
Sure.
can, but I think we need to be clear that there's a global allocation of funding that then gets applied. So there's a funding allocation that comes from the province, and then that amount is then deployed to offset the costs of various projects to reduce the amount of burden on the taxpayers for those capital investments.
So
But
it's-
there's a ceiling.
There's a
on the
cap
amount.
on it? Okay.
Absolutely. So
And-
we get an annual allocation that does change every year. And Mr. Finley or Ms. Dunlop, you can speak to what that allocation is for the
Yeah, I'd
current year. Yep,
be curious to know if we've exhausted that cap or
Indeed.
reached that cap.
but just, it's not that the province just comes in with its 2/3 and we can spend any amount. There is a hard cap on the allocation that's received annually. And that's based upon a number of different calculations, and it does vary from year to year. And I think, Ms. Dunlop, you have some good news about this year's allocation being higher than last year's, which is helpful. So do you want to go ahead?
Certainly, your worship. So yes, you are correct. We received funding from the Canada Community Building Fund. Our allotment for 2024 is just under 565,000, of which we've, in our capital justification form, only allocated 544,000. So there is about a $20,000 bump in our grants once we receive them, as well as the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund. We had allocated for 770,000 in our justification, and we actually received a bump up to 885. So taking that into consideration, there is about $140,000 that can be allocated should council wish to include Hess Road as an addition to the road program.
And I think this year we are fortunate to receive more than we did last year, but the number very, very much varies year over year. So it could be a little bit less, it could be the same, it could be more. It really is not at our discretion. It's an allocation that is largely provided, as you can tell, from the province, not the feds, that we do get a little bit from the federal government.
Okay, then I've got a couple follow-up questions if I could, because I'd like council to consider additional spending on roads projects this year rather than delaying, for example, to Mr. Finley's suggestion, delaying Hess a year. So if we're looking at Hess at 328, what I'm hearing is that we have room of 140, and the difference, here's my question, maybe it's to the deputy director or the CAO, could the difference come from reserves rather than taxation?
Ms. Dunlop?
That is always council's option. The reserve chart that has been provided as unaudited does show that we have in excess of a $20 million reserve. Some are dedicated, but yes, there would be the allowance of the extra approximately 190,000 that would be required for the completion of the Hess Road gravel rebuild.
Thank you. So I'm scribbling numbers down quickly, and I don't know if Councillor Strachan has been following because she's the numbers person, but you've already got this number here. I calculated 188,000 is what we'd need to complete the project if we use the 140. So that would be something I would move when it comes time to make a motion like that,
Sure.
from reserves rather than from taxation.
And maybe I can just ask Ms. Dunlop, for the purposes of our Public Works capital budget, is it common that we would take a reserve draw? I'm assuming there is a dedicated Public Works reserve for certain capital projects that are anticipated well in advance, correct?
And that's a multifaceted question. Is there a dedicated Public Works reserve? There is for specific projects, but not from a general
Understood.
road rebuild. So for this specific, it would come from general reserves.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. And then might I ask Mr. Finley, just while we're on the question of Hess Road, obviously we've been doing asset management within the municipality of North Grenville for many, many years. Having had this conversation at the counties as well, where there's an effort to have more kind of live real-time data about the state of certain roads. Remind me from your perspective, when it comes to asset management, is Hess Road next on the list? That would be your recommendation using a asset management lens?
So through your worship, Hess Road was next in our line from our surface treatment program that we had laid out over the next few years. It came down through how we are doing hard surfaces on the gravel roads and the areas from an operation and maintenance side of these roads are all grouped in an area that would remove greater maintenance and gravel maintenance. So it was through an operation and maintenance improvement side that we were looking at Hess Road as being next on our list.
So it really minimizes some of the operational costs that
Correct.
go into maintaining rural gravel roads?
Correct.
And this is a hard surfacing, that's the proposal for Hess?
At first, so it's a three-prong process for us. First, we do the gravel rebuild, which would be this year, then we'd hard service the following year, and then a slurry seal on top to seal in that product on the third year. So we start to make sure we have a good base before we do that hard surface. And instead of putting the surface treatment on a poorly gravelled road, it'll just break up late in very short term. So we do that gravel rebuild first as our asset management piece.
Okay, so it's a 3-year, it's 3-phase or 3-year?
It's a 3-phase process, but should be done in consecutive years to ensure the quality of the product.
Understood, okay, good, okay. Not seeing any other hands. Oh, we do have Doreen. Okay, Councillor Sullivan, I apologize. You're a little small square on a big screen, but I can see you now, so go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Director Finley, I believe it would be. So are some of these road works that Public Works would be taking on, are some of them contracted out versus done by in-house staff with our own equipment, etc.? And if we take on another one, do we have the resources to do even more than what you had already mentioned in the budget? So and I have one more question after that. Thanks.
Mr. Finley?
Thank you, through your worship. So there is a mix of what we do. So items like asphalt overlays or those slurry seals, we do contract out, as well as during the gravel rebuilds. We do use a lot of our own equipment as well as some contracting just to help get the heavier equipment excavators on site to do some of that work. So it is a mix. We do feel if Hess Road was added to the gravel rebuild list, it is something that can be accomplished with the workforce and our intended plan for 2024.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And the other question I have is I know for active transportation that it's already been approved at the county level that they will have wider shoulders or paved shoulders or safer shoulders for people to walk or cycle on the side of county roads. Are we doing anything like that for the municipal roads in the rural area? We get frequent concerns about people who are walking on municipal roads and that it's, they're walking their dog or they're just walking to the neighbors, etc. And that there's no extended shoulder on the road to safely walk or cycle on. And I'm wondering, are we looking at doing that when we rebuild a road?
Mr. Finley?
So through your worship, yes, depending on the project that we're looking at, for instance, the continuation of River Road, we're doing a full rebuild and repave there, and that's from the bridge that we stopped at in 2023 to Acton's Corners Road, and it will have paved shoulders. So projects like that, where we can accommodate easily, we do. Some of them that need a bit more attention if there's not enough space or the ditches don't allow for it. We try, if we can fit it in, we do. Some of them we can't squeeze in just based on the current geometry of the road without doing a complete rebuild.
Okay, well, that's good to hear in terms of helping to connect some of the hamlets for cycling or even walking in between them. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sullivan. I think we can carry on. Ms. Dunlop?
Next slide. Parks, Recreation and Culture are the next two slides.
Might I ask what the South Gore Pavilion accessibility upgrades might be? Maybe to Mr. Guy?
Thank you, Your Worship. Those upgrades are for accessibility handles for the washrooms, the men's and women's washrooms at South Gore Pavilion.
So it's the handles for the washrooms?
Yeah, like the automatic buttons.
Oh, I see.
That can be used.
Oh, I see. So the
yes.
automation
Yes,
of
correct.
the
correct.
washroom facilities.
That's correct.
Okay, that makes more sense for the $10,000 for sure. Okay, excellent. And might I also ask, in terms of the Enbridge Courtyard at Riverside Park, which will, I think, provide that badly needed shade, and that Enbridge grant was secured the year that we won Canada's Most Active Community, which is very exciting. Will that 50,000 be sufficient for the purposes of this shade structure you're anticipating?
Thanks for the question, Your Worship. Through the some of the quotes that we have received up to this point.
Oh, we've just lost your
Oh.
audio.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Through the quotes that we've been receiving so far, we should have adequate amount within the 50,000. We're actually going to use part of the 50,000 to purchase a couple of basketball standards as well for the outdoor rink as part of the courtyard works.
That's great news. And just because of the absence of shade currently at Riverside Park, is the shade structure, the Enbridge Courtyard shade structure, from your perspective, large enough? Because we know it's really the only shade that you're going to get in Riverside Park right now, just because of the absence of older trees that used to provide that shade. How large is the shade structure?
Currently, we're investigating a 12 by 12 structure, and we're looking at getting 2 of them.
Okay.
I think you could adequately, they won't come with a bench. It'll be a single steel pole with a fabric cover on the top. We're looking at the fact that you could probably get at least 5 or 6 chairs around there if people brought their own chairs to the park, or if we were just put a couple of picnic tables under there. Currently, they're about $9,000 each.
So these are mobile, so this will be taken up and down. These are seasonal structures?
They will not be, the structure itself will be there. It'll be concreted into the ground,
Okay.
but the fabric on the top will be removed
Okay.
every fall. So for the winter season.
I'm only asking because I think we're going to see heavy use of those shade structures, and the last thing we'd want is a very small shade structure that really is inadequate for the use of the park. And of course, with the new facilities that are there, I expect it's going to be a really busy place, which is awesome. It always is very busy. So I just want to make sure that what we're planning for will adequately meet the needs of those families who might be hanging out for a couple hours or what have you.
I can tell you that at our next Health, Wellness and Fitness and Active Transportation Advisory Committee, we are bringing some of those examples to that committee for them to have a look at and provide feedback.
Great. Councilor Strachan?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Guy, just for clarification, so the basketball standards you're talking about are going to be part of this courtyard area and not where the paved surface for the outdoor rink currently is? Is that correct?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Strachan. No, they would be within the rink.
Okay, thank you.
But we have spoken to Enbridge and said, you know, can we make these additions as part of the courtyard? And they were agreeable to that.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
And then finally, while I'm at it, of course, welcome any other hands. We're so thrilled that the new amenities, including, of course, the outdoor rink and the new building, of course, we've only seen the half that's operational in the winter, but it seems to be working very well in terms of heat and light and giving kids a place to change their skates. What would the parking lot improvements be that wouldn't have been contemplated as part of the Riverside revitalization that we've just undertaken?
Through the construction, when the construction was finished, we noticed some issues within the parking lot in terms of how the parking lot is sloped based on where the new building was constructed. There's an issue with water flowing towards the building that were never part of the original contract for that project. So that's where the 85,000 has come into play. We need to do some repairs. I've spoken to Director Finley. We're hoping that the Public Works Department can help us with those repairs as an in-house repair to ensure that the water is getting away from the building.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. And then finally, while I'm on it, I know that there are speed bumps anticipated on both sides of Reuben to help slow traffic down. And my understanding is these will be implemented late spring. Mr. Finley, can you speak to that as part of Riverside Park's pedestrian safety program?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we do have the speed bumps, and we are just waiting for winter maintenance to be over with, and then we'll look to install them shortly after that, and just confirming their exact location. This is something undergoing by staff right now.
Okay. Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor, is that a hand? I can't quite tell. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Guy. Once again, Riverside Park. I understand that there's a water bottle filling station planned for the upgrade of that building.
Through you, Your Worship, to Deputy Mayor Barclay. Yes, there is. Currently, we had a water filling station within the outdoor pool area. We're going to put it in a more accessible area that all park users can use. So it'll be on the outside of the new building within the breezeway that goes between the existing building and the new building.
And will it be seasonal then?
It'll be a seasonal
And do you recall
station.
the cost of that one item?
I know we got a grant 3 or 4 years ago for that. I think they were in the neighborhood of $2,500 to $3,000 each. But
so if we could find that in the budget, and of course it wouldn't include installation costs, but if we could cite a seasonal water bottle filling station in Rotary Park, would that be doable if we found that funding for you?
I'm not sure in Rotary Park where we would hook into the water at Rotary Park.
I believe there is access to water. Yes,
Is there?
Yeah. It's been cited as one possible location. Library has been cited as another one.
I know sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
I know
sure.
I have spoken to Emily at the library regarding the possibility of eventually putting a water filling station somewhere within the library.
So you recall that the BIA has asked for some consideration in this year's budget for a water bottle filling station. Somehow I can't say it quickly, either in Rotary Park or the library. So if we could find the funding for that, is that something that you could accommodate and have happen this year?
Yes, I think that's very doable.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Strachian.
Because we're all talking about the Riverside Park improvements. Obviously very excited about all of this going on through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Guy. With respect to the work that's remaining on the building itself, I know that we'll call it the more administrative side, I guess, that would access the pool and so on. That is still under construction, I believe. And if so, will that be complete in time for the swim season so that there won't be any disruption to the pool programming and staff and so on?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Strachian. Yes, the work in that existing building is completed. We just need a final approval through the building department. But I see absolutely no reason that we will not be ready to go on time this year.
Good stuff. It's great to hear. Okay. Ms. Dunlop, I think you're carrying on then.
Thank you. Next slide is also Parks, Recreation and
Oh,
Culture.
I do apologize. I now see Councillor Sullivan's hand. So we'll pause you there. Councillor Sullivan, anything you want to add?
Okay, yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor, through you to Director Guy. I just wanted to clarify the fitness equipment, the outdoor adult fitness equipment stations that are planned to go around the multi-use path at Riverside Park. Are they already accounted for in previous budget, or are they part of this $25,000 for that MUP at Riverside Park?
Mr. Guy?
Through you, Mayor Peckford, to Councillor O'Sullivan. They are included in the Riverside Park multi-use pathway. We are currently in the process of getting some pricing for the outdoor fitness stations. Again, we're going to be bringing them to the Health, Wellness and Fitness Advisory, Active Transportation Advisory Committee for comment. There are a number of different types that we have looked at that we'll be bringing to the committee, all with varying pricing on it. So that's going to have an impact on whether we can install one or two in 2024.
Okay, all right. So, okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Ms. Dunlop, back to you.
Thank you. And the next slide is again Parks and Rec.
Council colleagues, any questions here? Go ahead, Councillor Strachan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Guy, I apologize if this was asked previously, but for the pool upgrades under on the list of facilities, what does that entail?
Mr. Guy?
Through you, Your Worship. It's an automatic chlorine feeder. So staff at this point manually add chlorine to the pool. They won't have to do this. This has been an item that's been on the list for a couple of years. It was not part of the overall park project. This is a standalone item that we'll be doing this year.
I think my understanding is it's a bit of a health and safety issue.
That is correct.
A lot of staff turnover, so I think you're trying to reduce the risk of chlorination exposure. Do I have that right?
Yes, it certainly will make it safer if staff are not handling chlorine.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Anything else, colleagues, on this particular page before we move on? All right, the Armory building, Mr. Guy, just before we transition to emergency services, is the $350,000 allocation. Will that be sufficient for the additional modifications needed to make the building fully usable or to increase its capacity?
Through you, Your Worship, that $350,000 was a estimate that we received from an engineering firm a couple of years ago. So we've kept that number in the budget going forward. Currently, our facility superintendent is working on the RFP tender document to go out for design work. So I want to say that It should be sufficient, but it's a bit early to tell. Because within that, we have accessibility upgrades. We need to increase the exits within the building. We also need to increase the washrooms for the change of use.
Okay, thank you. Look forward to getting more information. Thank you. Ms. Dunlop, I think you can carry on.
Thank you. Next slide is the Emergency and Protective Services. Next slide is in regards to the Public Works, Parks and Rec and Facilities capital carry forwards from 2023.
And if I can ask the multi-use pathway County Road 44, this is, which one in particular? Is it the one that we're extending all the way to River Road?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Okay, so we have two different amounts, obviously for that MUP over 2 different years because it's a multi-phase project, correct?
That's correct. It's actually a 3-year, so the funding will take us into 2025 as well.
Okay, and do you expect the establishment of the MUP this year? I know last year was focused on design, is that right?
Yeah, we're still in the design phase. I spoke to our engineer last week, and they still feel confident that the construction will begin this year, and at least with the base work. Whether we get to the paving part in 2024 remains to be seen, but certainly the construction part of it will start this year.
And the paving would be done by an external contractor, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
The entire project, I expect, will be done by an external contractor.
okay, thank you. And might I ask on automated speed enforcement, certainly there are areas in our community, particularly community safety zones, where there are lots of residents who have expressed an appetite to see automated speed enforcement. I know, Ms. Dunlop, you've been waiting for the counties to potentially play a collaborative role. If the counties declines to play that role, do you believe that 20,000 would be sufficient to potentially establish a pilot project?
As you're aware, Madam Mayor, that the automated speed enforcement is only for community safety zones and school zones. The 20,000 is something the Public Works Department and the Bylaw Department are looking forward to being able to implement with county cooperation, but it would be seed money to work towards a pilot. The biggest thing is, how do we get our tickets? How do we get the equipment? And how do we make sure that people pay their tickets in regards to speed enforcement? So it's a program that is ongoing. I would ask that if Director Finley would have any additional comments to add to that, as he is spearheading this with the Bylaw Department.
Mr. Finley, anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. The CAO pretty well covered that. The biggest part is how is it enforced and the work behind those enforcements. So that's what we're working with Bylaw and what the hope was through the court systems between county and down in Brockville. If that can work, if we can jump onto kind of those systems. If without that, the 20,000 would purely be equipment and investigation, because we wouldn't be able to cover any ticketing, processing, and those kind of items just with that small amount at the start. So we're still kind of in the start of figuring how it will work, but we hope to move it forward this year.
Yes, thank you. And I believe that the province has tried to create many different pathways for municipalities to have alternative enforcement systems and appeal mechanisms, of course, for any resident who wanted to challenge a ticket in a community safety zone or a school zone. So in speaking with my colleagues across Eastern Ontario, there do appear to be companies that sort of support the handling and issuing of tickets. So I don't think we have to start from scratch here. There appear to be some municipalities of our size and with our growth that have tackled this. So I wanted to issue a word of caution that it's not obvious to me that the counties will necessarily play the role that they have suggested they might. And if there is a change of direction within the United Counties, I would like the municipality of North Grenville to at least look further afield for some examples of where communities of our size have been able to pursue this option in the absence of sort of more collaborative, in the absence of a more collaborative approach with their sort of county partners, if you will.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, we can, yes, we'll take that back and again, continue our conversations with our bylaw division to see how we can make that work. They may have some closer contacts with some other municipalities as well for some experience there.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Just a quick question through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Finley. This slide, I think, is very instructive. Most people don't realize that some of these line items have been carried forward for a number of years. So I'm prompted to ask the question, have we identified a location for the snow dump?
It's a great question, Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Worship, no, in short. Unfortunately, we are still in that process of trying to find the best spot to locate that. So we're still doing some investigations there.
And what would be the limitations or the challenges with relocating the snow dump at this stage? I guess I too might have assumed that you were further along in the process. Why is it so complex? Do we have a shortage of municipal property? What are the considerations that go into the identification of a new space?
So through your worship, there's a number of environmental constraints that can go into it because of the runoff from what's collected when we do snow removal. So that takes property, a significant property, to be able to have the proper storage and containment units. We also have to look at, again, operationally, most of our snow removal takes place within Kemptville. So we don't want to be too far away that staff are driving long distances for that snow dump. But again, it reduces the efficiency of trying to clear in short locations. So those are kind of the main items that we're trying to look at, where it'll be least disruptive, and of course not near any water courses or things like that from an environmental side.
But the current snow dump is perilously close to a water course, is it not?
That's why we're trying to get that one moved, Your Worship. Yes.
Okay. So I almost think almost anything would be better than where it is now because it's so close to the Kemptville Creek, right? I've captured that accurately, right?
So through Your Worship, we do a number of silt fencing and items to protect the site. However, it is close to the Kemptville Creek, so we are looking for a better location. But we do put up some preventative measures to protect that site. But yes, an alternative location away from the waterway would be preferred for sure.
Okay, well, hopefully you'll make progress and we'll be able to talk about some other alternative locations sooner rather than later. Ms. Dunlop, I think you can carry on.
Thank you, Your Worship. Next page is the 2023 capital carry forwards for the Emergency and Protected Services, North Grenville Municipal Center, and Economic Development. Total of 2023 capital carryovers equals a little over $1.7 million. Next slide. Now we move into the 2024 water and wastewater budget. Again, this is the budget is by regulation, separate and sustainable. Rates are set based on sustainable needs of the system in order to remain in compliance with all regulations. Director Finley has reviewed these items in the past meeting, but would welcome any questions. Do wish to highlight that there's no scheduled rate changes for the water and wastewater rates in 2024, that the debt schedule with balances is also included. So next slide. Next slide. This just demonstrates the rate structure versus actuals and the study. Operating budget for the water wastewater. Next slide. By category and by source. Next slide. This is the debt, including total outstanding balances for the current debt that the municipality holds for water and wastewater.
And I just want to stop you there, Ms. Dunlop, because I know we fielded the question. The interest paid on the debt for the municipal water system is paid through the user fees that are collected. by the users themselves. Is that right?
It actually depends on the specific product. It's either user fees or the development charges.
Gotcha.
It depends if it is a development product or if it is a normal operational, based out of the user fees.
I think the intention of that question was to highlight,
It is
Yep.
not taxation based.
indeed. So if you're not on municipal water and sewer, then you do not incur any of the costs associated or attached to the interest on these particular debentures, which are intended to keep the municipal water and wastewater system running smoothly, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Next slide is the capital costs and funding. As you know, that we anticipate a very large project, which is the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant, which we will discuss in a month's time or a little less than a month's time. So this is the funding sources for that capital program. The next slide is the capital budget for the water and wastewater, identifies the projects. Next slide identifies the 2023 water and wastewater capital carryovers, which valued at a little over $1.4 million. That completes the presentation, and I just have 4 points to raise from previous discussions.
Can I
Yes.
ask that we just take 5 minutes now before we go into the next round of discussion, which is to bring back additional feedback and obviously contemplate any other implications as we move towards the adoption of the water and wastewater budgets, as well as future adoption of the main budget. So is everyone okay if we take 5? Thanks. Calling Deb Wilson, calling Counselor Deb Wilson. Could Counselor Deb Wilson please come to the front? Calling Deb Wilson. Deb Wilson? No, it's a joke. I once did this to William and his cousin in a Walmart when they were 8 and we lost track of them, and William resents me for it to this day. Yeah, it, are we live streaming this? Is this all on YouTube? Excellent. Okay. It was in the local Walmart. All right. And the children were found and brought home safely and fed and put to bed. Okay. Okay. So we're going to bring it back to Ms. Dunlop. Ms. Dunlop, just to remind people, you have just finished presenting the 2023, I apologize, 2024 water and wastewater budgets, which include mention of the 2023 capital carry forward budgets. Before you move on, in terms of that capital carry forward, perhaps I can ask Mr. Finley now, when it comes to capital carry forward on water and wastewater, is it a question of not finding the qualified contractors, or is it a supply chain issue? What leads one to carry over that amount of work when it comes to our water and wastewater system?
Thank you. So through your worship, it's a mix of both. When we look at the SCADA pack replacement, some of the wet well mixing pumps and Bridge Street overflow, those were some supply issues. When we look at in terms of the concession road water main, there was some delays in the project, which although it's substantially complete, there will be cleanup along that road as well as deficiency repairs into the new year. So it's completing that project, which there was a warranty on it, a 1-year warranty piece as part of the project. So there would have been it's a multi-year project. And the same came with the capping of the artesian flow at Kernahan. It was a lump project with the Van Buren pipeworks replacement, and it was just a matter of timing with the contractor based on when we tendered as well to get the project done all at once. So they were able to complete the Van Buren portion of that project by the end of December, and actually the rest of the Kernahan project was completed by the end of January. It was getting some pipe materials in to do the project. So it is a mix of both of supply chain issues that created a lot of delays.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate that explanation. All right, over to Ms. Dunlop. I think you're going to move us to the next phase here, Ms. Dunlop. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, as part of the discussions from the many public and engagement sessions, the following items have been highlighted for consideration for addition to the budget or inclusion within. An amendment of the PXO, or pedestrian crossing line item, to be increased by $26,000 for the installation of a PXO on Prescott Street at Aza. The change of a multi-use path from Concession Road to a paved pedestrian shoulder on County Road 44 from the roundabout at 43 Southerly. No increases anticipated with county partnership. Oxford Mills pedestrian.
Sorry,
Yes.
did you mean County Road 44 or did you mean County Road 22?
On County Road 22 from the roundabout at 43 Southerly.
Excellent. Thank you.
The Oxford Mills pedestrian extension from the Maplewood Park to Tilly Lane as a paved shoulder with an increase of $34,000, and the expansion of transit by 1 hour, Monday through Saturday, at a cost for 2024 from April 1st onward of $20,000. These 4 items work out to an increase of 0.46 to the current 3.5 municipal rate, which takes us to a 396. 2 other items I wish to raise right now is in regards to the water bottle filling station that we have discussed internally. We can probably allocate up to $10,000 for a municipal water bottle filling station from existing resources. The only item outstanding is the Hess Road gravel rebuild program valued at $328,000. So I'm open to questions, Madam Mayor. And then there is a resolution or a recommendation included within the staff report.
Okay, thank you. So colleagues, I think you have the additional items that have been contemplated by municipal staff that arose out of the consultations. And that, of course, Ms. Dunlop, just to summarize again, is the potential establishment of I guess, a lit pedestrian crossing at Asa and Prescott, if I've gotten that right. In regards to longstanding requests for pedestrian connectivity at what is now the new, much safer crossing at 43 and 22 with the implementation of the roundabout. I think the initial conversation had been on a multi-use pathway, but I understand in your conversations with the counties from a feasibility and drainage perspective, a paved shoulder was the recommendation? Okay, and the potential for safe pedestrian crossing within the roundabout does exist, is that correct?
Thank you, Your Worship. The concrete is depressed within the island, so yes, it does allow for that pedestrian connectivity and crossing.
And would there be signage within the roundabout, obviously, to alert drivers?
It would be required as part of the pedestrian crossing.
Right, of course. And then I think when you spoke of a paved shoulder in Oxford Mills, it was in request to, in response to a request for the extension of a current sidewalk, which I think stops just in front of Maplewood Hall, is that right? And the rationale for a paved shoulder and not a sidewalk is what exactly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is again, the idea that it is a rural cross-section, so there are ditches in the area. So from a stormwater flow standpoint, we would still have to maintain that positive flow off the road to the roadside ditch, but still allowing for a substantial paved pathway for pedestrians, and it would have to be identified as such with pavement markings and potentially bollards.
Okay.
Seasonally.
Seasonal bollards. And then, of course, I think it's evident to council that there's a proposed 20K for the extension of the hours to our on-demand transit system from 9 to 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Is that right? That's what the budget captures? Okay. Okay, colleagues, so you have those 4 items for your consideration. And what I'm hearing from Ms. Dunlop is the establishment of some water bottle filling stations could be contemplated within existing resources or some unallocated special projects money. And then, as you've mentioned, the contemplation of Hess Road within this budget comes at a value of, what is it again, Ms. Dunlop?
A little over 328,000.
And you had suggested that with the unexpected increase in our OSIF allocation, how much would potentially be available?
There is an additional $140,000 in grant funds that would be available, which would leave 188 to be funded.
Okay. Either through a reserve draw or some other way. All right. So colleagues, any questions about what's been presented in terms of some additional modifications to the budget? My understanding, Ms. Dunlop, is you would just need direction from council to incorporate some or all of these items into the existing draft budget for a final presentation of the budget on March 5th.
That is correct, Your Worship.
Okay. So colleagues, I'll look to you for any comments or questions. Yeah, I see Doreen. So Councillor O'Sullivan and then Councillor Strachan, and perhaps we'll get closer to giving Ms. Dunlop some direction, and I'll also recognize Councillor Barkley.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Ms. Dunlop. You did mention this tax increase then could be from 3.4% up to 3.99%.
3.96, Councillor O'Sullivan.
Okay. How does that, that's the municipal portion. What is the portion that would, the final portion, including the county amount, given what the estimated county amount is at this point? I understand the county budget is not finalized yet.
Ms. Dunlop is just looking through her papers for that. The counties is very close to adopting its budget, certainly in the next couple of days. And I believe that the rate is 6.25, 6.28 is the final number that County Council will be likely adopting later this week. But of course, I won't speak on behalf of my county colleagues, but there was good unanimity during our last budget discussion. And I should note that part of what the counties is also undertaking is an increase to its capital works budget to ensure that more road works are done, not just this year, but in forthcoming years through the establishment of a dedicated public works capital levy, actually, that will help to offset costs associated with the very large County Road 43 rehabilitation, but also other roads. All right, Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you, Your Worship. So on one of the slides, we did identify that with the 3.5 and the 6.28 from the county, it would be a 3.99 blended tax rate, which worked out to about $189 across the board for 400,000 assessment. I do not have the number with the increase of the 0.46 potential municipal increase, but we could bring that back on March the 5th.
Okay, thanks very much for that.
I'll recognize Councilor Strachan and then Deputy Mayor.
My question was related to the final proposed tax rate. My math says we're around 4.3 after all these changes. So in that ballpark, just back of the envelope calculation. So no question, Madam Mayor.
Your back of the envelope calculations are often very accurate. So we appreciate that they're back of the envelope, but they often have a lot of relevance to the discussion. So thank you. I'll go to Deputy Mayor, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to ensure that the direction to staff regarding returning Hess Road to the gravel rebuild in 2024 looks to other non-taxation sources for funding.
Right. So Ms. Dunlop, I think the non-taxation sources are really truly at this point the reserves. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Certainly, I'd like to note that at the county level, the policy has been for a number of years now that any surpluses at the end of the year, the vast majority of those reserves go into a dedicated capital reserve that is largely utilized for public works projects. So it might be something that as we move through this year, Ms. Dunlop, could be considered to support instances just like this one where instead of potentially drawing from general reserves, which I think is an acceptable practice on occasion, we could draw on a dedicated capital reserve. It would, over the long term, help to enable some additional capital works projects. There's no doubt. Councilor Barclay?
Yeah, that reminds me when you talk about reserves, and this is a question through you to the CAO. I know with the Heritage dedicated reserve, council has a decision point about how much to, once we have accurate numbers, how much of that reserve to place into the Heritage Reserve Fund. And I believe, although I stand to be corrected, that it's the same with the Affordable Housing Reserve.
Correct.
So my question is, when do we do that?
Through you, Your Worship. We have to look at some of the reserves. That was a reserve policy I haven't been unable to find. But with the hiring of a deputy treasurer and hopefully soon a treasurer, we will be able to pull up our existing reserve policies and bring back to council an updated policy to make sure they're current, up to date, and can incorporate some of the suggested changes that council has defined this evening.
Okay, so is there anything else in regards to the items that have been outlined? I think really all that Ms. Dunlop is looking for is some direction to at least include these in the these additional items in the final draft budget that we'll receive on March 5th. Do you need formal direction for that, Ms. Preston?
The recommended verbiage is provided for in the report, which includes a direction to staff as per the deliberations of this evening, which I believe Ms. Dunlop and I find in order if council is agreeable. From my
Right.
notes thus far, it's been agreeable
Okay.
to colleagues.
Okay, so then thank you for that reminder. I can read the recommendation. That is that council approve the 2024 draft operating and capital budget for the water. Can you hear me okay? Okay. For the water and wastewater division, direct staff to amend the 2024 draft municipal operating capital budget as per the deliberations this evening, and direct staff to bring forward a final 2024 draft municipal operating capital budget with corresponding bylaws for consideration on March 5th. So I'll look for a mover or seconder for that particular motion, please. Am I misreading the room? Okay, Deputy Mayor? Okay, Councilor Strachan? So with that, any final questions or concerns for this evening? And I will note that the award of tender for the largest expenditure within our operating and capital budget has been deferred by 2 weeks as we investigate our eligibility for an important provincial grant. So that's not part of tonight's deliberations, but it will be coming back fairly soon. So seeing no hands, I'm going to call the question. All in favor, please. Okay, great. Thanks. That
Yes.
carries. We do have a couple of other items that I don't think will take a long time, but are part of tonight's agenda. We do have the Mayor's Task Force on Clean Technology. The terms of reference are here for your consideration. As I recall, I've gone to CDAC and I think, did they go to advisory committees directly, the two that we had named, Ms. Preston?
No, CDAC was in preferential order
Right.
following the last council meeting, so they've only risen to CDAC at
Okay.
this point. But the provided recommendation includes that the terms of reference as well as the recommendations for appointments would go to the advisory committees following this meeting this evening.
Okay, all right. So the resolution, as it's outlined to us, or the recommendation is that we accept and adopt the terms of reference, appoint the following individuals to the Mayor's Task Force in accordance with the membership section of the terms of reference. 4 have been named from CDAC, who in fact are part of a important subcommittee doing a lot of heavy lifting in this area. It also includes Debbie Wilson, who's the co-chair of that committee as a council rep, as well as the solicitation of committee applications and advisory committee appointees. And finally, the approval of a small budgetary allocation of up to $17,500. So do we have a mover and a seconder for the terms of reference, please? Councillor Wilson, Deputy Mayor Barkley, any comments or questions at this stage? Councillor Strachan?
I think I did disseminate this, the terms of reference, the draft terms of reference to the Environmental Action and Ag and Rural Affairs Advisory Committees as council representative on both of those committees to solicit some last minute feedback, Madam Mayor. So I'd just like to provide some of the context and some of the comments that I received back. The challenge with this current TOR is without having had a review done by the other 2 committees, the emphasis is on the economic development portion and not any input from environmental or ag and rural affairs perspectives. And I think that there will be additional input that comes from ag and rural affairs. I have heard, and some of us who are the other council representatives have heard from environmental action with their concerns as well. The definition of clean technology or green technology is vague at best in these terms of reference. And I know that it's a difficult one to tackle and that it's a newly formed task force. But I think that more time needs to be spent on defining those, because the next step is to not just get membership for this task force from the Environmental Action and Ag and Rural Affairs committees, but also to go out to residents to fill the other 2 spots. And I think that the definition of clean tech and a very specific mandate needs to be well defined, or defined certainly better than what is currently in the terms of reference, before going out to residents and asking them to be part of it. Because I think they have to be very, it has to be very clear what we're asking of them. And so I would request that time be given for, at a minimum, the other 2 advisory committees to review and provide some input to perhaps in an effort to better define what clean technology means, and to come up with a very a tighter mandate, I think, than what's currently in these TORs. And with that chance to review, I think they could all come together with one perspective on that, and then going out to residents to fill the last two positions would build a stronger team.
I wonder if we were to take the representatives from both the Environment and Ag and Rural Affairs Committee, if those appointees came together along with the CDAC appointees, if they could deliberate and better articulate that definition of clean technology in advance of a recruitment process of our community members, because that would allow for some, I think, early brainstorming that might be really helpful to the process overall. I know that there are certain, sitting on environmental action, I know that there's certain members that maybe, or at least one for each, which is what's outlined here, would be well suited for that kind of brainstorm, and perhaps that would help to keep the process moving without necessarily delaying some of that early thinking that I think is really important to the task force's success.
If I may add to that, I don't think the delay would be significant. The Environmental Action Committee meets next week, and the week after is Ag and Rural Affairs. So within the next 2 weeks, you would get input from both of those committees and not just individuals who have yet to be selected, because those conversations have not happened at the advisory committees level. So I think you could get a fairly quick turnaround by putting both, by putting these terms of reference on both of those agendas in the next 2 weeks. And I think that's a fairly reasonable ask of them, now that they have the draft ones already, that they could provide some significant input in relatively short order.
I think that's reasonable. I'm not sure that we're going to get to a perfect consensus among all three committees. Obviously, this is being initiated out of CDAC. So I think there is obviously there's a definite thrust to the committee of looking at economic development, but looking at it from the perspective of how do you generate opportunities that actually promote clean/green technology. And I think those terms are amorphous. So I think if we give those additional committees a chance to provide some feedback at the end of the day, the discussion on March 5th may not be to the full satisfaction of those other two committees, but certainly the feedback won't hurt. But I think we just want to recognize that the genesis for this is out of CDAC. So with that in mind, some of the considerations obviously are economic.
So I guess just to finalize, I guess my take on this, absolutely. I think that there is going to be a challenge for coming to a consensus. There always is when you involve more people. However, I don't think that CDAC actually knows what clean technology should be defined as, because it's not in the terms of reference right now. So I think they're struggling with that, and they would benefit from additional input, and there would have to be a final decision made. Absolutely. But I think if it's only going to be economic, then it's just a business terms of reference. It does need to have a very tight definition for clean technology.
Deputy Mayor?
I'd suggest that we defer the motion.
Yep, I'm more than willing to consider that. I think the evolving arena of clean tech, green tech being what it is, even for this particular task force, will mean that there is some nebulousness, right? It's a bit amorphous at this stage. What I have seen from the conversations at CDAC so far is, however, a real appetite to leverage some of those opportunities that enable for the pursuit of green, clean, environmental, economically sustainable opportunities. So I really look forward to the task force moving ahead, but the feedback from the other two committees certainly can't hurt. Yes.
Apologies, Madam Mayor. If consideration could be had this evening with whether or not council wished to undertake any of the budgetary ask. I would note that in the presentation and in the report, it was noted that no municipal budget has been provided for this task force, but the ask has been put out for 17,500.
Right.
So perhaps direction could be provided to staff if council wishes for it to be included in the budget, because that would be another additional item that would need to be considered in advance of March 5th, should council wish for
Yep.
it to be in the budget.
I believe, Ms. Dunlop, you've contemplated that reality, so it can be accommodated.
Yes,
If
it has been
required.
accommodated.
Okay, so it can be captured as part of the draft budget on the 5th. Okay, so we'll do the terms of reference, the final terms of reference, and on the 5th. Okay, so do we need a motion to defer?
Yes, please.
Madam
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Sullivan.
Hi, sorry, I guess you didn't see my hand.
I didn't, I'm so
Uh,
sorry.
That's okay, that's okay. I agree when I reviewed these documents in advance of tonight's meeting that green technology, clean technology was very vague in those, or non-existent in the terms of reference. And I also, so I'm supporting a deferral until we have more information. But the other question I had was regarding the $17,500 ask. What do they anticipate that is going to be needed for, and how did they arrive at that number? So it seems like that the people who've been named, in my opinion, the people who've been named to the this task force already from CDAC already seem to have a good understanding of what clean technology or green technology must mean, and they must have an idea of what they need that money for to come up with that particular amount. So I think they may have more understanding and more knowledge that needs to be articulated out to us, or to me for sure, and to the other advisory committees. And then we're looking to get people from the public to put your hand up and say, okay, I'd like to be part of this. They need a clear understanding of that. So I'd like more information about the budget ask and what the definitions of green, clean technology really means, and what's their end result of this task force. What do they want to see come out of it? So I'm
Okay,
in
it sounds
favor
like
of
there will be
deferral.
more information coming on March 5th. Certainly, my sense is that the 4 individuals within CDAC who, in fact, formed a subcommittee to contemplate these very issues, they're well along in their discussions. Again, I don't think a perfect definition is going to be arrived at, because I think it is a very evolving field, but I'm sure that we can certainly get more information from them, and that can be part of the March 5th discussion. Were you next in line? I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor? No, you didn't have your hand up? Okay, Councilor Strachan, anything else?
One additional comment regarding the length of the mandate. It has an initial report effectively in 1 year, and then the final in 2026. I'm a bit concerned with that timeline simply because of an election year, that a mandate would be put forward and that there would be no time to execute, and no guarantees that it actually stays around for whatever the next term of council is. So I'm not sure if that was considered when looking at that. I know that the mayor's task force on affordable housing, which had a very big task ahead of it, wrapped up in, I believe, a year was the bulk of the work that was done. So I'm just wondering if maybe as we move forward, not to be decided necessarily tonight, if the mandate is the right length, or if a shorter mandate, tighter, more work in that sort of concentrated effort within a year would perhaps yield more timely results.
As I understand it, the thought process was a year wouldn't be enough. 2 years may be too long, sort of, again, all depending. I take your point, Councilor Strachan, and we can certainly bring that back to the subcommittee. I'm sure, I know that Councilor Wilson is in active discussions. Councilor Wilson, is there anything else you want to bring to light in terms of the discussion? Okay. Okay, sounds good. So we do not need a motion to defer at this stage?
If Councillor Wilson and Councillor Barkley support the deferral, then we could move into it and vote on that.
Okay. Do I have
Yeah,
support for?
I
deferral?
support it since I suggested it.
All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay.
Yes,
That carries. Thank you. All right, we will move on then, and we are at Mr. Guy's item, which is the recommendation around the Sweetheart Brunch facility fee waiver request. Mr. Guy, can you speak to that?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the report I bring forward tonight is a waiving of fees or request through the Knights of Columbus Kemptville Council for the recently event held here at the Municipal Center, the North Grenville Community Sweetheart Brunch. Next slide, please. So the Knights of Columbus Kemptville Council has requested a waiving of fees. They had rented the North Grenville Municipal Center Hall A, B, and C. The amount was $1,271.26 for the event. This included 2 days of facility rental for event preparation and the event itself, which was held Sunday of February 11th from 8:30 to 12:30. So the Knights of Columbus have been serving the community of North Grenville for 60 years. They've been holding the Sweetheart Brunch since 1999, and it helps the Knights of Columbus support local charities with the funds raised through the Sweetheart Brunch event. In 2023, they provided $9,000 to local charities, and in 2024, will provide $14,000 to local charities. Our policy states that individuals or groups requesting waiving fees must show that by not paying rental fees, it'll reduce financial barriers for not-for-profit organizations. The event or program will provide broadly based and valuable services to the community, or the event has social community benefits to the residents of North Grenville and it is open to the public. So through that, the recommendation from the Director of Parks and Recreation is that we do waive the fee in the amount that was stated. This will allow the Knights of Columbus to support, to provide extra dollars to local charities they support. The Sweetheart Brunch event aligns itself with the intent of the waiving of fees policy. Specifically, the funds raised will assist with providing broadly based and valuable services to the community of North Grenville. Thank you.
All right, any questions or comments in regards to this item? This is, I think, the third year this request has been brought forward to council, and they were one of the catalysts for the implementation of the new policy. So I'll look to a mover and seconder, though I do see Councillor O'Sullivan's hand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The only thing I would add to that, or is just a small correction, is that it's Knights of Columbus, North Grenville. It's number 5333. There was 1 3 missing in that. For the Knights of Columbus in the policy or in the motion, and I would move that motion.
Great. So for the waiver of the rental fee of $1,271.27 for the Sweetheart Brunch, we have a mover. Can I look for a seconder, please, for this motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any questions, concerns, comments other than the one we've received? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please. Okay, that passes. Thank you very much. Again, noting under Public Works that we've deferred the award and noting under correspondence that we have already, via the consent agenda, adopted the recommendation in regards to the bicycle rack cost sharing program policy. I know that this is an important policy for Councillor Sullivan, among others, so glad to see that having been advanced. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would have pulled that from the consent agenda, but I'm sorry, missed the opportunity to do that. I just would like to know what the plan is for implementing it, or a communication plan about that policy, so that it's out there, so that current property owners and landlords will be aware of this opportunity to provide bicycle racks parking for their tenants or customers.
Mr. Guy?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor O'Sullivan, the Parks and Recreation team will be communicating and sitting down with our communications team to put together a plan to ensure that this new policy is put out in the community and that the community is very aware of it, which would include our businesses and commercial clients and customers that we have.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Guy.
Great. So then we have that one last item, and that is a request that I've received from United Counties Public Works staff, director and deputy director, that council consider supporting in principle the installation of stop signs in the community of in the area of Hexton at County Road 22 and County Road 20. In discussions with Ms. Dunlop and Mr. Guy from the United Counties, there had been multiple requests for a potential stop sign at this particular intersection. Mr. Guy and county staff did the appropriate traffic counts. Overwhelmingly, they have supported the establishment of the stop sign, a four-way stop, and they are, as a courtesy, coming to North Grenville's council to ensure that we're supportive. So at this time, the only thing in the way of the establishment of those stop signs is the motion from North Grenville to support the counties moving forward. So I'd look for a mover and a seconder, please, for this particular stop sign. And I see Councillor O'Sullivan and Deputy Mayor. Councillor O'Sullivan?
I will
okay.
second or move it.
Great. All right, great, perfect. So Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sullivan, moving and seconding. Any questions in regards to this one? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor, please. Good. This, I think, will come as a great relief to many of the residents in Hexton. So want to thank the residents who did reach out and persisted over a number of months to see this come to fruition. They were absolutely there. They were right in their read of traffic flows, and the county study certainly confirmed that. So with that, we're moving to the period for questions from anyone connected to the media or any community member this evening. Any questions, colleagues? Yes? Yeah, you'll have to come down. Thanks. Sorry to make you walk so far. Welcome. If you could just say your full name and turn on the mic, please. Yep, you're good.
Diane Switzer. I live at 1206 Eager Road. And Eager Road is parallel to Hess Road. And Eager Road has 12 houses on it or some such thing. And then Hess Road has a few less than 12. We'd love our road paved. So please, please pave Eager Road.
Mr. Finley, do you want to talk about our asset management methodology, where Eager Road may or may not sit on that list?
Sure. So through your worship, we do it. So through our roads needs study, it wasn't evaluated as the now needs. It is in a future look. I'd have to go back to the study to see where that sits. A number of items that get evaluated is their connection points. So through Eager Road being connected to Pelton and Town Line versus Hess being connected to the county road and coming through the Town Line. That was another factor that pushed necessity of one over the other. And again, we are looking in a global sense of that southeasterly part of the municipality and kind of going southwesterly as we move through rebuilding roads. So it will be a recommendation from staff in the future. Again, if council wishes to push that ahead further advanced, they can surely make that decision as well.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you for your please.
Thank you.
Thank you for your please and your please. All right. With that, anything else from the two community members here this evening? We're okay. Okay. So then we'll go to our confirmation bylaw, and that is that bylaw 1724 to confirm proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on Feb. 20th be adopted and passed. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Sullivan, you want to move that? Deputy Mayor is moving, seconding it. Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. And then finally, motion to adjourn, and that is that we adjourn at 8:50 PM. Not so bad for a February evening after a long weekend. So I'll look to Councillor Wilson, Councillor Strachan, mover and seconder, calling the question. All in favor? Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. And we are adjourned. Have a great day, Councillor Sullivan. Enjoy
Thank
New
you.
Zealand. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.